Hello children, and welcome to Clay Time with Mr. Barnes. Let's talk about glazing today. I'm going to show you two methods for glazing. The first thing that you need to do when you find, so pinch pots are out right now. Pinch pots are out, but they're probably dirty like this, and that's no good. If you try and glaze a dirty pot, what's going to happen is the glaze is going to grab onto the dirt and it's going to like fall off, and it looks really, really ugly. So the first thing you need to do is wash your bisque ware. Does it look wet yet or anymore? It's drying pretty quickly, right? So this is how glazing works. Glaze is not the same as paint. What it really is it's powdered glass that is suspended in water. The water soaks into the bisque ware really quickly, and then it leaves a very thin layer of the powder on the outside. And the powder could rub off really easily, okay? It's not until we fire it in the kiln and we melt that powder into glass that it becomes permanent and glazed like this, okay? So after you wash it, it's a good idea to let it set for a few minutes by itself. Now I have this one that I started glazing earlier. I have two different kinds of glazes. I have dip glazes, which are in buckets like this, so you can dip your project fully into the glaze. You can also paint with this, but then I have glazes like this that can only be painted. You can't, this is too small, you can't dip anything in it, right? So with this glaze, you give it a good shake. I only have a few colors in bottles like this. And if you do use these ones, the consistency of the glaze should be like thick cream. You see that? So if it looks like it's too thick, come and ask me. I'm the only one that should be adding extra water to the paint to thin it out if it's too thick. It does dehydrate a little bit. So I've got two coats on here. I need to paint a third coat of glaze. So if you're painting glaze, that's the rule. You got to do 3 coats, okay? So I'll finish glazing that later. But you also want to leave a little gap at the bottom. That's your safety zone. So we don't glaze the bottom. If you do happen to get glaze on the bottom, you need to wipe it off with a damp, wet sponge. Make sure that there's no glaze on the bottom, because if there's glaze on the bottom, what's going to happen when I fire it? It's going to melt. That glass is going to melt and stick it permanently to the shelf, and it'll never come off. Now this color is called Deep Fire Brick, and it looks like this when it's finished. It does not look like that out of the bucket. This color is called Chili Gloss. Can you stand up and look? Can you get a look shot in here? Okay, so it's the water like this, the powder kind of settles. So before you use any glaze, there's stir sticks. Okay, if it's red like this, it will stain your clothes. So just fair warning. I would wear an apron if you're gonna be glazing. So you need to mix this really well until it stops looking watery and it starts to look more like that thick cream consistency. See that now? So it looks less watery, it looks a little thicker now. Now, one other thing that you can do, which I recommend that you do, because I wouldn't trust all your classmates, is to strain your glaze. So dip out a little and then pour it through a strainer. Oh no, you're in the splash zone, you better move, bud. I'll try and be more careful. The reason this glaze is so red is it contains a lot of iron oxide, which is the same metal in your blood that makes your blood red. Isn't that fun? Okay. So, and this is a mess, right? This is gonna require a lot of cleanup, okay? So I've got this, and I'm gonna rinse this off real quick. So this glaze is strained, and if you have something like a cup, it's a good idea to take some of your glaze, pour it on the inside, swirl it, You get the whole inside and then quickly pour it out. And then, so I did not strain enough, but then you would dip it like this. So ideally, you would dip it into the bucket, right? Or else you strain out enough glaze that you can dip the whole thing. Sometimes I like leaving a little bit of the pot unglazed because you get a nice contrast. But if you're dipping glaze, you only dip it one time, okay? That's it. If you want, you can do a second coat and you can overlap them just a little bit, but you don't want your glaze too thick, because if it's too thick, it will run off the side of the pot. So I might do 2 more coats of that kind of around the bottom, and then I have 2 different colors. You can mix glazes that way, and that's fine, okay? I'm gonna check the bottom, make sure I don't have anything on the bottom, and then I'll take it back outside and set it outside to be glazed. This glaze, even though it looks bright red out of the bucket, it ends up looking like this when it comes out of the kiln. So it's sort of a complicated purplish, reddish, yellowish, brownish, blackish. I don't know, it's got a lot going on. It's a complicated glaze. It's one of my favorites. I think that covers it. Questions? Okay. When you are done glazing, it is very important that we do not want to cross-contaminate glazes. So you put it back in the same bucket. Make sure you put the same lid back on the same bucket, okay? It's gonna start becoming important that if your cleanup job is the glaze room and the green room, we need to make sure that the glaze room stays clean, okay? That's all. I think we're good.